today I wanted to touch on gardening in general. And honestly, this would be maybe some micro steps for the ultra beginner gardener. And I just have three things in mind that maybe if you or someone you know thinks they want to have a huge garden and grow all the things and food, flowers, anything in the garden here, and has never gardened at all, but they want the dream. This is what I would do to start. And that way you can test whether or not you like it, whether or not you can keep pushing it and learning more. So step ultra, this is micro baby steps, right? For the ultra beginner gardener. And number one, I would say sounds a little weird, but I would say start in the kitchen with doing sprouts. These are super simple, and you can find them everywhere, but you have to maintain them. You have to tend to them. So it's a way you don't need land. You don't even need dirt at all, and you can keep it super duper simple and start with sprouts. So I don't know most grocery stores, but a lot of grocery stores nowadays, you can find sprouts in them. The little seeds, you can do broccoli sprouts, you could do alfalfa sprouts, you could do sunflower sprouts, whatever. And some of them, the ones I like probably a little more, are like the mix of sprouts and mung bean. Anything smaller of a seed will sprout quicker. So if you got a bigger seed, you'll have to do a little more prep work. And this is all great for the micro baby step for gardeners. You'll have to soak the seed, and then you'll be able to go through the process of sprouting them. And all sprouting really is if I were to start from scratch with sprouting, I would take my sprouting seed and I would rinse them off. And then I would have a clean jar, like a mason jar or a ball jar, and some cheesecloth and either some like yarn or twine or a rubber band. And I would take the jar and fill it up with water with the seeds in it. I rinse my seeds off first, but then put the seeds in the jar, fill it up with water, and let it soak for just a little while. And then by a little while, depends on the seed. So like those, the bigger the seed, the longer they need to soak. And it has been a while since I've done sprouts, but I have thought about pulling them back out and doing them. That's why it's kind of the top of mind for me. So I would say soak for, I don't think it's 24 hours. I actually would have to go back and look. Just say 30 minutes, maybe. I'll have to go back. Maybe I should look this up. I knew it wasn't 24. There we go. So sprouting your seeds ranges from 8 to 12 hours. Now, this is just internet talking. So 8 to 12 hours, and then you do dump that water. I do a little rinse. This is what you're doing with the cheesecloth, or you can use a washcloth. Like you don't even need a mason jar. You can take an empty peanut butter jar. It doesn't matter. And just play with this. So we soak our seeds in water in the jar. Put the cheesecloth or the washcloth or whatever that's breathable. Me personally, I want to let the air out. So put the cheesecloth or washcloth on top, either a rubber band to secure it, or yarn or anything to secure it. You do not need anything. You don't have to go out and buy anything besides the seeds to test this. And so soak them, dump the water out, and you can just, if your cheesecloth or washcloth is secure enough, you can just tip your jar over and let the water run out. That is some experimenting. There are places, even Ball, I think, has like sprouting set up and whatever, but you don't need it if you're just gonna test this. And honestly, I don't even use it, and I can sprout pretty well from my makeshift sprouting area. And I'll tell you about that. But you dump the water out, and then what you want to do is let there be air able to go in your jar, but you don't want to leave it open. So you have to like angle your jar at some sort of angle so that the water doesn't stay on. The water can go out, and air can go in. So that's why for my little makeshift area, I use a Ball jar. And depending on the seeds, like I'll use I think some of the seeds I use, the bigger ones especially, or if I'm doing a lot of seeds, you start out with this little tiny little layer of seeds. Well, that tiny little layer, after a while, that I'm going to tell you that you'll have grow, they just become this mass. I mean, you've probably seen them in grocery stores, this sprouts. They have a pint size container, and it's full of sprouts. Well, that came from probably this tiny bit amount of seeds. So and really, it is, the whole concept is you are rinsing them every day, and you are letting it drain. You are rinsing it every day, and you are letting it drain. And then that's all they do, is that's what they're designed to erupt and to start growing. And when you can get those sprouts to become micro seedlings, and of course, there are some really big time people in the sprouting world, and I'm not going to go into the whole botany lesson of seeds to sprouts to microgreens and all that kind of stuff. Microgreens is another thing I wouldn't necessarily let them go. That's like the little baby, like it has leaves. So that's the extent of my botany lesson for today. So you just take the seeds, and the concept is you're going to rinse them. And of course, you're going to look this up. You're going to rinse them, and you're going to let them drain every day. And you just don't want things growing on them. And if you have to, you can change out your cloth every day. So my makeshift area, I have one of those wooden dish racks, like you wash your dishes by hand, and then it has the little slots for plates and that sort of thing, and it has like this like a folding effect. I put like a towel or a mat or something underneath that on the counter. I have a little corner, and I put the dish rack on that, and then I take the jars that I'm doing different sprouts in, and I rinse them, and then I pour the water out, and then I set the jar, and it automatically has like a 45-degree angle, and I just let the jar upside down. Of course, the water can come out and the air can go in, and it just keeps things clean. And you'll notice that every day your seeds will get bigger and bigger. Well, the seeds won't, but the plant that the seed is growing into the sprout, the sprouts are getting bigger, and they are it's amazing how they don't need anything. They don't need dirt to sprout. It's amazing. It's just so, it's interesting to watch. And then you just wonder, how does this even happen? But it's all in that little tiny seed, that even that mustard seed is so tiny and it has all that it needs inside to start growing. So that is the micro baby step if you think you want to be a gardener for the ultra beginner. I would say start with sprouts. Now, with that stated, I would not stop with just growing the sprouts. That's not the whole point. The point is, what are you going to do? You're not just going to grow them and throw them in the trash. What are you going to do with the sprouts? So what I would recommend, how are you going to use them? It's one thing to be able to start something, and this, I'm talking to myself, a really big talk to myself, Neva here, to start something and to grow something, but what are you going to do with it? You follow it through to the end of why you wanted to grow it in the first place. Are you going to use these sprouts in a stir fry? Are you going to put them in a salad? Are you going to dehydrate them and make something fancy dehydrated, cracker or something? There are so many ideas that you can't even collect them all and talk about them all. And you could put them on a soup. That's what I'm saying. There are so many ideas. They're almost limitless. But that is part of the challenge of not just starting the sprouts and getting those sprouts to the point where they're usable, is what are you going to use them with? So kind of go into it with, what do you want to use your sprouts for if you're going to try this ultra beginner gardener micro baby step here. And honestly, I know I'm calling it like a baby step for the beginner gardener, but even for an experienced gardener, I mean, that's a way you can garden in the winter. And you don't have to have dirt, you don't have to have land. You just need the seeds, a container, and a few, some water and a few things to hold it. That is what I would do. If you've never had any gardening experience, at least that would give you something to start with, to see if you can start it, grow it, and use it. That's my first challenge. So the next thing I would say is actually go ahead and get a plant, like a little baby plant from a department store or the farmer's market or a nursery in town, something. You can even start from seed, but if you're the ultra beginner, you don't even have to start from seed. Just get a transplant, just a baby plant, and whatever it is that you want to grow, could be a flower, it could be food, and get a pot that's appropriate for it and grow it for the season. If you go to the big box stores, this is and you know nothing about gardening, and you honestly don't even have to. If they have the transplant there for sale, go ahead and plant it. You don't have to think, is this the season for it? Usually, go ahead and plant it. So just say you want to grow a squash or a zucchini. They're in the same family. So those plants get pretty big. So you don't even need a huge pot, but maybe you don't want to buy a pot. You just get a 5-gallon bucket. Again, this is testing your gardening interest. So you can just get a bag of dirt, put it in your 5-gallon bucket, put your now squash and zucchini get really big. Like they take it over. That's why one of the reasons I love squash and zucchini is you transplant this little bitty plant into the garden, and especially for me, I diagonal plant them, and it covers the whole bed. So weed seeds that I don't want in there, once they get to a certain height and and growth, they cover the whole bed, and so it's all shaded, and there's minimal weeding. But again, if I would just get a 5-gallon bucket, pour some dirt in it, get one transplant, squash or zucchini, whatever, and plant it in there and let it grow, and you will, and the more you pick, the more they're going to grow, at least for those, squash and zucchini for the most part. Now, if you're going to do a tomato, most tomatoes get tall if you have something for them to grow on or be tied to. You'll just have to be a little picky on what you plant, because most plants, seriously, besides carrots, don't need any more than 6-inch depth. So a 5-gallon bucket is way more than you're going to need. And again, the 5-gallon bucket, if you poke holes in it so it doesn't accumulate water, you don't want them to have wet feet. Though that will be my one little extra thing for you to do to that 5-gallon bucket. But in general, most plants don't need more than 6 inches. And I learned that. I didn't really think about it until I read through the book, like the Square Foot Garden. And it was like, why didn't I ever think about that before? Like, you see everybody tilling the ground, and these tractors that till the ground go really deep. Sometimes they'll do the plow, and it's like probably 1.5 to 2 foot of a mound of dirt that it does. And then they'll also till, and they'll disc, and they just take, it's unnecessary for most circumstances. So going back to the bucket, poke the holes in that bucket, transplant one plant in there that is appropriate for it. Again, the tomatoes can be viney, or they can go up, or they can sprawl. If you have room, let them sprawl. See what happens. If you have a post or something next to your house, or maybe you want to get, if you want to buy something extra, a little trellis that you can tie it to, you can get that you can get that at the box stores. But even a stake or stick, like just a stick, a long stick from the woods, and just tie it with some yarn. Nothing fancy. This is just testing your interest. Now, depending on what you're growing, food or flower, again, just like the sprouts, my challenge to you isn't to just grow it and maintain it. It is to harvest and to use it. So what are you going to do with it? Let's just stick with our squash, because that's very an easy thing to grow, is squash and zucchini. Most places can grow this pretty easily, and it's very prolific. It's like a rabbit. It just keeps on pumping out squash and zucchini. Especially the more you pick, the more it's gonna give. It's kind of like flowers. It would be a zinnia. Like the more you pick, the more it's gonna produce. So what are you gonna do with the squash? Are you going to freeze it? Are you going to use it fresh in a salad? Are you going to can it? One thing I made, and I had a friend, I'd given her a jar of this that I had canned, and it was using the squash, but it wasn't just canned squash. It was almost said zucchini. It was squash relish. That's what I made. For some reason, the words weren't coming to my mind, so I made squash relish, because we had so much. Sometimes when you have so much of something, you have to figure out what all to do with it. And squash relish was something I could do with a good bit, and it was shredded because it was a relish, and I didn't have to pressure can it. I could just use a water bath canner. But you don't even have to go that far. You can canning wise, unless you're wanting to, you know, get into that creative side on how to preserve your food. And even if you just want to use it fresh and you don't want to do anything else, you don't want to freeze it, you don't want to, you're just testing, right? This is a test for the ultra beginner gardener. And you can, what is that spiral thing? I've never done that with my squash and zucchini. Is some people use that spiral, it's not a shredder, it's just like a cutter, and it makes like the noodles. I've never really done that. I've used spaghetti squash before, but that's a different thing. But some people do that. What else? I'm just using squash as an example, but really the whole point is for you to experiment with like a bucket or a pot and one plant in dirt and maintain it, grow it, harvest it, and use it. If you can do that, then you can go on. If that is too much for you, don't start a garden yet. Now, my next thing out of my 3 micro baby steps, and you could do this at any point in time. The first 2 were what you could do on your own, in your own home or, your homestead. And I would say is to find someone else that has a garden and offer to help them with it. And you will see what is involved in maintaining the garden or pulling the garden back together, like me, with tons of weeds out there because I've ignored it. But if you can find someone that has a garden and offer to help in the garden, and you don't necessarily, and the point of this isn't for what you can get in return as far as a product. There are places that will do that, but it can be in your lessons learned would be like what you get out of it. Because sometimes it's just cultivating, which is like messing with the ground so the weeds won't grow. And other times it's weeding where the weeds have already grown and you have to take that back. Take the weeds out so that the plants that you want to grow can have free reign and everything they need. So the hard work for helping someone else in their garden could be lessons learned, but sometimes people will have something that you can get in return for that besides a lesson, and wisdom that because number one, they're gonna, if you don't have anything that you need in return, like truly, like you just want to be helpful and you want to learn, that's going to be so helpful for the gardener you're trying to help, no matter if it's a very small garden or a big garden that you can consider a farm. Now, the bigger you go, as far as looking for a garden to help in, the more they're going to have things streamlined, and the more they're going to have, most likely, they're going to have like lines in the sand, like, okay, well, they're a little more systematized, and the bigger their garden. But you don't have to go big. You don't have to go to a farm that's a garden. You can go to someone you know, or someone you know that know someone. Usually there's someone that has a garden somewhere and people know of them. It doesn't matter if it's food or flowers or, a landscape type thing. I would kind of stick with food or flowers. But because most of the time people that want a homestead, that's what they want to grow. They want to grow food. And a lot of times people want to grow flowers as a complimentary. Ooh. And that is going to grow your garden. Not the thunder, but the rain that it brings. So if you can go and help someone that has a garden, weed their garden, plant in their garden, plant seeds, anything that's helping them in their gardening life and in their garden, is going to help you. So if you get a harvest of any kind, be super thankful. And again, going back to the challenge, what are you going to do with it? That's not the end. I want to challenge you to fully, it's not the end of your gardening experience. It needs to go into, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to use it fresh? Are you going to dry it? Are you going to freeze it? Are you going to can it? Are you going to preserve it in some way at all? Maybe you're going to use part of it fresh, and we've done that a lot. Like, having so much basil, sometimes basil herb grows so well that there's so many, you can't just have 50 gallons of basil. What else? We end up running through all kinds of things. What else can we do with basil besides having dried basil as an herb in our dehydrators? So then we end up making pesto, and you learn something else that you can do, or anything. So that is my challenge as far as what you harvest, even if you're helping someone else in their garden, to go ahead and use it, preserve it if you need to. So I just want to recap this. If these are the micro baby steps, if there is an ultra beginner gardener, this is what I would do. This is what I would recommend. Number one is the sprouts. You don't need much. Most grocery stores have them. And number two would be to plant one plant in a pot or a bucket that has holes in it, and that would be your actual dirt involved plant, whether it be flowers or food. And then third, I would recommend, and it doesn't have to be after that. You can do that in the midst of this. Isn't like what you need to try first, second, third. These are just different steps. So I would definitely, if you can find someone that has a garden, offer to help. You will learn so much from what they do, why they do it. And if you get no produce or flowers, if you get knowledge and wisdom and a new friend, you've won. So if you can get through those things, then I would say maybe you could branch off into having a garden bed. Just a garden bed. No more than a garden bed. We want to start small, because if we don't, we will bite off more than we can chew, and then we won't want to do it. And that will be the sad part. So I don't want anyone to bite off more than they can chew. Although we all will end up doing that, we will learn that lesson, and we will go back to regular bite-sized steps. So there we go. That's it for today. Thanks.